Okay, so I am attempting to go live on Patreon today. And if you're listening, I appreciate your patience. I have never been on live on Patreon before, and I have a community there. I have a show called Please Me, and I am trying to build my community on Patreon. And so I am trying to go live there because I am attempting to start doing a live once a week. And I'm trying to figure out the details of how to do that right now. So I appreciate your patience. I see that there's a couple of people listening on YouTube, and so that's awesome. And I'm just trying to figure out if I'm live here or not on 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 Patreon. I am trying to figure this out, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. I have looked at all the directions, and unfortunately, I am not the most techie person. So I really was able to sort of muddle through my live events in the past on Instagram and YouTube and figure it out, and Facebook. But for some reason, Patreon is stumping me. So let's see. Okay, so I don't know. I may be live, and I'm not absolutely positive if I am or not. Um, I know that I am live on YouTube right now, which is awesome. I'm going to close this one because I have several windows open here. And so I don't think I need all these windows open. And I just want to make this work as easily as possible without my computer working too hard. So, Harold, thank you very much for telling me to take my time, no pressure. I appreciate your patience. I see you, Harold. Your comment came up on StreamYard. However, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you listening from YouTube, or are you listening from Patreon? And I have a feeling that I've failed with a capital F on trying to get myself onto Patreon live. If I do and it's happening, I am going to be very excited. I did press publish, which is what was supposed to start the stream, but I don't see my video there. And usually I'm used to seeing a video of myself streaming, and I see nothing. So I'm not sure if I did it right or not. So my apologies for taking so long to try to get this set up. But I am going to go ahead and start. I would like to do a little bit of a stream today. I was earlier on SDC.com doing this very same topic. And the topic is Behind Closed Doors, or the title of my topic is Behind Closed Doors, the Truth About Swinger Parties versus Freakoffs. And so I compare and contrast the two. And I want to just introduce myself, my name. Okay, you're from YouTube. Okay, so hopefully we'll get some viewers from YouTube today. And I'm not sure if we're connected on Patreon, but I will try and figure that out before next week. And I would like to start doing more lives. And so I just want to introduce myself. My name is Eve Hall, and I am a licensed physical therapist who treats sexual health conditions. I have a practice called Inspire Health Physical Therapy and Wellness, and it's based in Palm Beach County, Florida. If ever anybody out there is listening who's interested in treatment for sexual health conditions such as erectile dysfunction, decreased vaginal sensitivity and dryness, premature ejaculation, painful sex, incontinence, and other sexual health conditions. I also have a podcast called Please Me. And Please Me is my platform that started off as a passion project and is now just finishing. Tomorrow is the last episode of season 5. And so we've been going strong for 2 years, and that's been super exciting. And one of the episodes that I did in this particular season, season 5, was with Lexi Silver, who is the SDC media coordinator. She's also an author of spicy novels. She does erotic novels, and she is also a coach that coaches people, specifically swingers, through the process of starting into that lifestyle and helping them to navigate the lifestyle, and all of the things that come up at the beginning. And so she helps couples and singles to do that. And I interviewed her for my podcast this season, and the name of that particular show was What the Swinger Lifestyle Really Looks Like. Hint, it's not a Diddy freak off. And she is a wealth of information regarding all things ethical non-monogamy and swinger lifestyle. And so that was a wonderful episode with her. So I encourage you to listen to her answers to the questions that I asked, because she had such great insights. And also, if you're familiar with a magazine called ASN Lifestyle Magazine, I also am a columnist for that particular magazine, and I write an article monthly for it. It is a free e-magazine. So if you're interested in that publication, you can join and subscribe to that magazine for free. And if you're listening to me on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And I'd love to hear from anybody out there listening who has any questions as I'm discussing this particular topic today. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the issue of intoxication when you're in a sexual experience. And during the quote unquote freakoffs that were in the news when Sean Diddy Combs was, in the news, it was discussed that oftentimes women would come to these parties and be handed a glass of alcoholic beverage. And within a few sips of that beverage, they would feel loopy, they would feel dizzy, they would feel out of control. And obviously, drugging somebody is not consensual. And when you go to a swinger party, on the other side of that coin, oftentimes it's BYOB. So you're bringing what you like to drink. And so you have more control of the alcohol that you're drinking, or the beverages that you're drinking, whether you decide to drink alcohol or not. But I will say too, that in the swinger lifestyle, being drunk is looked down upon, because when you are completely drunk, and it's nothing wrong with having a couple of drinks, but if you are completely drunk, you are not able to physically consent. So drinking or drugs, like for instance, they talked a lot in the trial about all of the different drugs that Puffy Combs would bring to the parties, ketamine and ecstasy, and other drugs that he would coerce people to take, oftentimes giving them a drink and having the drug inside without any consent. And so that is a big no-no in a swinger community, because consent is everything. So, Katrina, why do humans like group sex and swapping? Why does it turn us on? So, not everybody likes that, right? But certain groups do, and so I think that having options is a beautiful thing for us as humans. We get to choose the sorts of sexual experiences that we want to participate in. And so the number one thing, though, is that they be consensual. And unfortunately, in the freak-offs that we heard about when the Diddy trial was happening, a lot of times the issues that came up were because the women there were not consenting to what was happening to them, and he was using coercion and other tactics. So we're going to discuss that. But why does it turn us on? I mean, visually, it can be a turn on to some people. Some people like to watch, some people like to participate. So sometimes it's a turn on to be watched. So, there are a lot of different types of kinks in the world, and they're all valid. There's no shame around any of it. Sexuality is not a shameful thing. It is, after all, how we all got here, right? And so to have these conversations is so very important, because sexuality is something that needs to be discussed much more often than it is. And so that we can learn how to protect ourselves and learn how to have as much fun as possible, whether that be choosing a monogamous relationship or choosing an ethically non-monogamous relationship. All options are valid and all options are possibilities. And it really depends on each person to make that individual decision for themselves. And when you think about sovereignty and bodily autonomy, it's so important to really figure out what you want to do, particularly, and explore. And as people go through life, they may change their mind. Things may change, and maybe they start off as monogamous and then they end up as ethically non-monogamous, and then later on end up as monogamous again. So it really changes throughout your life, and all options are valid. So I hope that answered your question. So another thing that was alleged in the trial was that there was coercion. And one of the cogs of the power and control wheel is using coercion and threats. So I'm just going to read from my little notes here. The abuser may threaten the victim with harm or other actions, such as taking their children away or forcing the victim to do things against their will. And so in the trial, we heard that, this was one of the tactics that Puffy Combs was using to coerce women to do things that they didn't want to do, because he was, saying that he would maybe help them with their career or provide some kind of financial assistance to them, or even employees that worked for him. He would threaten to fire them if they didn't do the things that he asked them to do, whether they were illegal things or even things that just they were not agreeable to. Having sex with victims in the party, and they being victims themselves of being coerced into doing these things. So in a swinger lifestyle party or in an ethically non-monogamous community, enthusiastic consent is absolutely necessary and is the gold standard, and really should be the gold standard in any kind of relationship, whether it be ethically non-monogamous or monogamous or any relationship. We want enthusiastic consent from all parties involved, whether it be two or more. And then, of course, the power dynamics were something that was also exploited during these parties, or these, not parties, but freak-offs, right? And he would exert his power over the victims because he was controlling them in some way, whether it was offering them to help them with their careers, or maybe they were employees and he was giving them employment. And so he would use the power of that to control and coerce and have them do things that they didn't want to do. And so that on the other side of that is empowerment, right? And so when I talk about sovereignty and bodily autonomy, we have the ability to empower ourselves to do the things that we want to do. And it is empowering to be in a space, and especially as a woman where you are sort of venerated and you are, sought, and you have the control to consent or to not consent. And so it can be very empowering of an experience to be in this situation where you have the control and you choose who you want to participate and have fun with and who you don't. And so, that's another difference between a freak off and a swinger lifestyle party. As we go along, again, if you have questions, feel free to ask them along the way. I will stop and answer questions. Another thing that was discussed in terms of the freak-offs was that there was no privacy, right? Because he had video cameras supposedly like all over his house, and he would video these freak-offs, and then he would use the footage from those freak-offs to threaten people that he would release it if they said anything about it or complained or brought him to court or anything like that. He would say that he would release the videos, which could ruin somebody's reputation. And so that was something that was used as a tactic to control. And on the other side of the token, at a swinger party, respect is so important. Respect for people's boundaries, for their physical space. Everything has to be consensual. Can I talk to you? Can I touch you here? Would you like to play with me? Obviously, conversations flow and it's not that quick, but respect is absolutely the foundation for any swinger lifestyle party. And if someone is being disrespectful, there are people there that are, monitoring the parties and making sure that people are having a good time, and also taking any problematic issues or people and escorting them out the door. Because if someone is being disrespectful or not respecting other people's boundaries, they will be asked to leave. And that is the opposite of the freak-offs, where oftentimes the people that were hired to be, quote unquote, bouncers or, moderators of the party were actually in on coercing these victims to do the things that P. Diddy wanted them to do. And so it is different than the respect that is experienced in a swinger party. Another thing is the exhibitionism and voyeurism that's involved in group activities, right? And so that is a kink that many people have. Some people like to be watched. Some people like to watch. And that is a turn on in and of itself. And a lot of times that is the introduction that people have to a swinger lifestyle party. They'll go and they'll watch the first time. And so they'll be a voyeur. And there's many people that like to be watched. And so when you are experiencing something like that, the person that's watching may come up on somebody in the middle of having fun and will say, "Do you mind if I watch?" And so again, respect and consent is always expected. Whereas in a freak off, it was alleged that sometimes he would crawl back into a room without the victim knowing that he was there, and he would watch the victim be in relation with it could have been like somebody else at the party, or maybe one of the sex workers that he hired to be there to participate with the victims. And so, obviously sneaking in and being watching somebody is different than asking for consent to be watched. And so this was also a violation of trust and also abuse. So what I did when I discussed this on SDC.com a little bit earlier was that I went through the power and control wheel. And I just want to like briefly break that down here, because I think it's so important for people to understand what the different tactics are that people that are abusive would use to control their victims. And oftentimes, when you're looking back at your previous relationships, you might say, oh, that was a red flag I missed. And I know that when I had a conversation with Amanda and Sean from Touchy Subjects podcast, I interviewed them for my show and I did a 2-part episode. I was thinking to myself, oh, yes, that sounds relatable. That's something that I remember in a past relationship. And so the 2-part Touchy Subjects episodes were called Touchy Subjects, How Abuse Hides Behind Love and Control. And that was part 1. And the part 2 was Emotional Manipulation Exposed, Understanding the Power and Control Wheel. And so the second one is the one that I'm going to just briefly highlight here, but I encourage you to go back and listen to the episodes to get the entirety of them. They were amazing episodes, and they were a wealth of information regarding sexual abuse and abuse in general. And one of the things that Sean said on the show was that even if it's not physical abuse, if it's a different type of abuse, if it's emotional abuse, those victims need just as much help as someone who's experiencing physical abuse. I just recently had on my show Susanna Rose Stokes, and she talked about the fact that she had experienced sexual abuse, but because it wasn't penetrative, she thought that she didn't have the right to say that she had been abused. But after a time and after understanding what abuse really is, she realized that she had been sexually abused. And then she felt more empowered to say, yes, this happened to me too. But that is oftentimes the case. Abuse doesn't always have to be penetrative to be sexual abuse. And so I think it's important for people to understand that. So let's just go through the spokes of the power and control wheel, because I think that they're so important for people to understand. Using intimidation, that's number 1. So abusers may use threats, gestures, or displays of anger, such as smashing things or breaking objects, to create fear and make the victim feel unsafe. And so if you feel fearful that you're going to get physically injured by complaining about something or bringing something up that needs to be changed, or just generally discussing issues that come up in a relationship, that is going to really inhibit you from being completely sovereign and free in that relationship. And it can be very intimidating, and obviously leaves the abuser to be in a state of more control. The second cog of the wheel is using emotional abuse. So this involves making the victim feel worthless, ashamed, or guilty. It can include name calling, belittling, or humiliating the person. So calling someone a whore, calling someone a slut. I mean, in certain circumstances, that could be appropriate if the person consented to it and wanted to be called those things. But if somebody is belittling you or putting you down, that can make the person feel very small, and it can be used as a tactic to control by an abuser. Using isolation. The abuser may try to isolate the victim from friends, family, or other support systems, making them feel dependent on the abuser for social or emotional needs. And isolation is something that often happens at the beginning of a relationship, right? So if you start having a relationship with somebody and then they start getting jealous, and I thought jealousy was an interesting thing that Sean and Amanda brought up as a red flag early on in a relationship. And when that jealousy exists early on in a relationship and the abuser is using the reason that they're maybe they not may not say I'm jealous, but they may say, oh, I don't want you talking to, your friends, your family, because of XYZ, or other men in your life or other people in your life, because they want to get with you, and so you shouldn't have contact with them. So isolating the victim, and as the victim slowly cuts these ties with their family and friends and other previous partners or whatever that may be, right? They're cutting their ties, then that's giving the abuser even more power to control them. And they're, it's causing them to break those ties, and because they think that it's going to make them happy. But unfortunately, it just gives them more control and power over the victim. Minimizing, denying, and blaming is the fourth cog of the power and control wheel. And this tactic involves the abuser downplaying the seriousness of their actions, denying their behavior, or blaming the victim for the abuse. Like, you made me do it, or it's not that bad. And so, this is something that, can happen in abusive relationships where people are experiencing minimizing, or they're blaming the victim themselves. And so this is another tactic that abusers use. Using children. So if there are children involved in the relationship, the abuser may manipulate or threaten to hurt the children, or may use them to control the victim. This could also involve making the victim feel guilty about being a bad parent, or threatening to take custody. So this is also a fear tactic as well, because people want to protect their children, and so they will do things to protect them, and oftentimes it will be something that's non-consensual. So using children can be something that an abuser can also use. Using male privilege is something that is also common. So in heterosexual relationships, this often involves the abuser asserting their dominance based on traditional gender roles. The abuser may feel entitled to control or dominate the relationship, and the victim is expected to submit. And so this is one of the things that Sean talked about specifically, because he thought that this was an interesting spoke of the wheel, but absolutely in patriarchal societies around the world, including ours in the US, where men are typically the ones that are the more dominant in relationships, that can also be used as a tactic to abuse, by wielding that privilege in a way that is negative, and manipulative. Using economic abuse is something that also we saw in the Diddy Combs trial as well, where the abuser may control the victim's finances by limiting access to money, restricting job opportunities, or preventing the victim from making financial decisions independently. And I will say that, when we were talking on SDC, that, one of the people was saying that, we had seen this from him for many, many years, for like 20 plus years, right? Where it was a pattern that he was repeating with different relationships. And one of the people that testified was actually somebody that he was in a current relationship with. And I think that she testified under an alias. and he was still paying for her apartment that she lived in. So using economic control to control the victim, it was something else that that's part of the power and control wheel. I'm starting to get to the point where I can't see the bottom here. Okay. And then using economic, okay, I just said that one. And then the last cog is using coercion and threats. So let me just put this back up here. So using coercion and threats. So the abuser may threaten the victim with harm or other actions such as taking their children away or forcing the victim to do things against their will. So yes, we absolutely saw that using coercion and threats, like I'm threatening you by saying that I'm going to take this video of you that you were doing XYZ in this party, and I'm going to use it against you. I'm going to put it out there into the world, and that could ruin your good name, and it's going to ruin your ability to be able to get a job, be a singer, etc. So absolutely using coercion and threats was something that we saw in the Diddy trial as well. So those are all of the cogs of the power and control wheel. And I wanted to sort of tie that in here with the this conversation about the difference between freakoffs and swinger parties, because swinger parties are about empowerment and about sexual freedom, sexual liberation. So whether or not you believe in monogamy or ethical non-monogamy, even if you are in a monogamous relationship, consent is key. And we discussed, which episode was that? I can't remember right now, but we discussed in one of the episodes that I did this season that in many states, even in the United States, there are antiquated laws that are still in place where in heterosexual relationships or in like marriages, the woman is expected to be the male's, sex doll basically, and the man can rape their wife and there's no legal repercussions for that. And in many states, these laws still exist. Some of them are being overturned. But unfortunately, in the state of the world that we are today, our women's rights are being targeted. And so, so we definitely need to continue to fight for our rights to bodily autonomy, to the choice to do what we want with our bodies, whether it be having an abortion or not, and also the right to choosing who we want to be with sexually or not, who we allow to touch our bodies or not. And consent is always key, is always the most important thing. So with that being said, I want to open the floor here to any questions that may come up here. And I appreciate you guys sticking through the beginning where I was having technical difficulties, and I'm crossing my fingers that this is working on Patreon too. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I just wanted to mention here that not this weekend, but the following weekend is the ASN Awards. The ASN Awards are I was nominated for 2 ASN Awards this year. One of them is Best Educator, and the second is Best Educator Website. So I invite you to go to pleaseme.online and check out my website. It is a plethora of information. I have lots of fun things there. I have all of the webinars that I have done on there, actually some of them. I have my show on there, the podcast, or you can follow the podcast if you're listening on YouTube. All of my podcasts are on my site on YouTube in video and audio, and so you can watch the show there. I also have an amazing sex toy store, and when I will see patients, for instance, with erectile dysfunction, I have a whole protocol of things that I have them follow One of the things being that I asked them to get a penis pump and use it on a daily basis for 10 minutes. And so in my sex toy store, there is a penis pump there. And so it is a wealth of, different options in terms of products, etc., that I use myself. So I invite you to check out my website. I also want to mention that I was nominated for some Latin podcasting awards, and I just today got the categories that I was put in for the Latin podcasting awards, and really it kind of blew me away. So I want to share them here. I was nominated in the Revelation Podcasts category, the Education category, the Best Female Podcast Award category, the English Only category, the United States category, the Best Video Podcast category, the LGBTQ plus category, and also the Revelation of the Year category. And so I was blown away when I read that email today, and I just want to share it with you because my show is about sexuality and sexual health, but it does really cover so many different areas. We talk about things like this, where we talk about sexual abuse, right? We also talk about spirituality in sex. We also talk about physical sex. I did an episode about penis size. We talk about all sorts of things, erectile dysfunction, different types of issues that people might have in their sex lives. And so there are many different things that are encompassed in the show. So I encourage you to listen to the show. If you do listen to the show, please leave a review. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. And share it with people that you think might also benefit from hearing from that episode. I know that sometimes after recording one, I'm like, oh my gosh, these 3 people come to mind that, I think they would really enjoy this episode, and I'll send it to them. So if you listen to an episode and you think it's beneficial for you and for maybe someone please share it. And also, when you do, please also leave reviews, because that is how podcasts grow. And if you want to support the show in any way, it's always very, very, the support is given with gratitude. I have so much gratitude for all of my listeners and all of my fans. And so I appreciate all of you. I have a Substack newsletter, a free one, and also a paid version that you can subscribe to. And I think it's only like $6 or $7 per month. I also have a Patreon account where you can listen to my episodes as an early release without any commercials. And so you're missing out on the 15 commercials that are on the show. And there's also bonus content there as well. So you can join me on Patreon. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and please just leave a review when you listen to the show. And I really appreciate you listening. James, thank you so much for your comment. First time here. I haven't been doing lives lately, but I'm going to start doing lives once a week. And I was for about 20 minutes there trying to figure out how to get live on Patreon, because I want to create a community there as well. I have a big community on SDC.com, which is the ethically non-monogamous dating website that also is a host of a host to many different educators that do lots of webinars there. So if anybody is interested, you can join SDC.com and have a free trial membership on me. I should post my code. I think it's 37340 is my code. Let me just put it here. SDC.com. And I host a webinar on SDC once a month. Oops, I think that's a comma, not a period. I always have to see this. Okay, and it's 7340 for a free trial membership to SDC.com. So you can check it out there. And I have all my webinars on there. They're all there under if you go to the website and you find me on Please Me, you'll find under videos all of my webinars that I've done. Some of them I have done live here, so you might see some crossover, but there are many that I just have done on SDC. And hopefully you'll be seeing me here on YouTube doing some lives as well. So I appreciate you all coming today. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat now. I'll stick around for another couple minutes. And if not, I am going to say goodbye. Well, I'm going to thank you all for listening. Please share this with anybody that you think might benefit from it. I know that for me, as soon as I recorded the episode with Amanda and Sean about the power and control wheel, I thought very specifically about my niece who is in an abusive relationship. And unfortunately, we talked about how abusers will oftentimes circle back to their victims. They want to bring them back into the fold, right? And so a lot of times victims will return with their abusers, and oftentimes it will take 7 or 8 times of breaking up with that abuser for them to kind of really get rid of that situation and move on from it. And it's unfortunate, but it's because the abuser sees the benefit of keeping someone that they've already done all of the work to manipulate and to coerce and to belittle and to control. And so if an abuser has that control already, they're going to want to maintain that control. And so oftentimes the victim goes back again and again. And it's not always all negative, right? Sometimes there's a lot of positive in those relationships. And so the victim might go back thinking, oh, maybe this time it's going to be different. He's going to treat me well. He's treating me well now. Or she, right? Because it can go either way. And so unfortunately, victims will oftentimes get back into these negative relationships. And so I encourage anybody who's listening to this, maybe not now, but in the future, because this will be living on YouTube. So hopefully we will get much more views. That if that's you, if you've heard this episode, if you are listening and you can relate to any of these things, that there is help out there. There are organizations that can help you to exit these relationships, and there is help. And so I will direct you to those specific episodes, again, with touchy subjects, how abuse hides behind love and control. And then the other one was emotional manipulation exposed, understanding the power and control wheel, because in my show notes, okay, and you'll find those right here on YouTube. In my show notes, there are the actual organizations that can help people to get out of these types of relationships. So reach out there. Thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate that, James. And no, I do not. And so thank you for being here today. And I appreciate your support. And check out my show. All righty. Have a great day. Bye-bye.